comment card. And we want everyone's feedback. So if you don't feel comfortable talking in the big group, this is another way that you can reach out to us. You can email us, communications@opalco.com. And we're trying to get everyone's comments. We don't want to leave anyone out. We want to hear from all of you. So our agenda tonight or today is Foster's going to give a little overview of the project. We're going to give Rock Island one last chance to kind of talk about their fiber project they have going on. And then we're going to just open it up for Q&A. If you want to say, instead of a question, you just want to make one statement, a short, like 2-minute statement about your position, you're welcome to do that as well. So we're recording this meeting, we're taking notes, we're going to try to document everything we hear from you today. We just want you to keep in mind that this is still very early in this project, so some details may change. Some things we don't know or have the answers to yet, so we're not purposely trying to be vague. We just, some things we don't know. And yeah, we want to hear from you, and when we can hear enough from on certain points, we're going to try to accommodate the needs of the Decatur residents. So Foster, you want to go ahead and talk about the project?
Why don't we do this real fast? Why don't we conclude our Rock Island? They were nice enough, there folks in Allie. I don't know if you, who knows Allie? Allie is funny. She's been making sure you guys get all connected to internet. That's really important to us. So they were nice enough to come over here and spend their Saturday with us. I want to be able to get you guys back home to your families. Is there any further questions that you guys have?
You want to come to the camera, Alan?
And then we can answer those. Or we could follow up with any online stuff, or I think if you know how to get a hold of Alan and Allie, I think that you guys are probably pretty squared away.
Yeah, am I gonna hear or be read questions if there are any on
If there's any on Zoom, we will read them to you, yeah.
Okay, yeah, we kind of just had a chance to go over a general update, just for the benefit of those who are on Zoom. For the most part, all of Decatur has kind of had its share of its excavation complete. We're working through the Decatur Northwest area. That project is still slated to take a few more months to complete with excavation. So fall of this year is about the time we're planning on being fully wrapped up with the Decatur side of things. Crews are working on Peninsula Drive currently, going to be moving out of there. A couple of additional crews are showing up to help speed up some of the work. And we've gone over, I think the other high level thing I want to highlight is we understand you're all anxious to get connected. There's a few things that we have to make sure are in place to do that. And you just be very aware of the email or the emailing we send out if it says, action needed, there is something that we need you to do. Otherwise we appreciate the patience in waiting. And when we'll be proactive in reaching out to you when we're ready for you to go through your next stage, which is if you got your excavation done, you're ready for installation, we'll work through that and getting you going. So I know a lot of people in here today felt like I'm worried I'm missing the boat. I'm worried I'm not doing something. And we looked at all those, and generally most of you are in a good position. You're just waiting to hear from us, and we'll make sure that we're not going to leave any stragglers. We're going to be very thorough about following through on that with you guys too. Allie's done a fantastic job with communication out, and I really appreciate her efforts. Her team's really good at that, and we'll continue to do that to make sure you guys all get wrapped up in the project. Do we have any specific questions?
Anything on the
Zoom?
Are the excavators bringing the cable into the house or up to the house?
That's so the excavation crew is just simply putting conduit in the ground, and some of them are putting fiber in that conduit. Rock Island's internal teams are the ones who do your installation in the home. So that will be the crew doing that work.
You said something earlier that was really good. When you bring a team over here, we put them on a barge, we get everything kind of organized, and then we're going to do that in waves. So just make sure that you realize that the onesie twosie connections are something we're really trying to combine everybody together so we can be
for efficiency's sake. It's just there's some windows that we've already pre-blocked out for Decatur for areas that are ready. Try to jump on. I'd say, be selfish. Get your slot first. We just simply can't connect everybody in one summer, right? And we've got to remember too, Decatur is one of many of the projects in ARPA we're working around the county, and so we have to kind of divide the resources up. And we have time to do the installation. I wish we could get everyone connected the day we get the excavation done. It just logistics don't facilitate that. We appreciate the patience and we are ahead of schedule, which is awesome. So it's coming sooner than it was, but I know it gets antsy.
Do you think, I think we got about 90% of Decatur kind of in communication of what we all need from.
Yeah, we've
What
got
about
about
the people that are not, is there still a chance for those connections to happen?
So there's about 40 people on Decatur Island that have not responded to our outreach and trying to work through the project. If you are one of those people in this room, grab us, talk to us, let's get you going on that if you're interested in doing it. This is a grant funded project, and when the project is complete and we have to close the project out, there will not be funding to facilitate extensions of service later through that grant. So that means you're on the hook for doing your own digging, kind of like your alternative there. Now, there will be more facility available, which means it's probably going to be less than it used to be because the middle miles have been built and more infrastructure is in place. However, really, it's smart to take advantage of this opportunity. It costs you nothing to do it, and there's no obligation to take the service. It just provides the access to it through the grant. So if you have a neighbor who's been hemming and hawing and going, I don't know, talk to them, and encourage them either to reach out to us and confirm that they are not interested in participating, or ask us the questions that they need to answer before they make a decision. We're very happy to communicate and have those conversations.
So we don't want anyone to miss out on this opportunity.
Yeah.
It's really amazing.
Yeah.
Quick question on the grant, is there any risk that the grant goes away and with that timing, I think you've spoken.
Yeah, it's not the first time that's been asked today of me. Obviously, I can't say I've got 100% certainty about anything. I will say this, we are very fortunate that we are about a year ahead on scheduling because there is conversations that ARPA programs are going to be sunset earlier than 2026. Their timeline there. So we do want to pay attention to that. There's always a risk that something could change, but so far we've had no indication from the Washington State Broadband Office that these infrastructure grants through ARPA are being targeted to be shut down. We're probably more interested in watching what happens with like the BEAD grant that's coming. And the awards that Rock Island has gotten for the two project areas here for that. ARPA is pretty safe, but we're not going to sit back and just coast thinking it's going to be safe. We're just going to kind of keep our pedal down, get the project done, and not put us at risk for seeing it sunset early and lose the funding opportunity.
Yeah, we submit those invoices as soon as we get them, just because we don't want to lose them.
Yeah.
But we get nervous on those things, so the neat thing is you guys are so ahead of schedule that we can make your connection.
Yeah. We
David,
got another question on Zoom. We'll grab that one.
David Groff says, we have cable to our house. When do you anticipate it will be functional?
There's this is the answer. Some in the room have heard. It depends. There's things, if you've got cable to your house, it could be you've got the conduit to your house. We will reach out when we're ready to put you on an installation. I think that's the key is there's, while your driveway got dug and there's conduit there may be other components of the project that are necessary to be completed in order for us to actually turn the service on. And just, you'll have to sit patiently and trust that we'll reach out. We want to make sure we get everybody connected that we can connect, but we will reach out when it's appropriate to actually turn your service up. But if you want a specific answer, if you want to email us, do you want to use the ARPA or straight to you, Bo?
I think at this point, just come to my email.
Okay. Yeah, Allie B, ALIB @rockisland.net. And we'll type that into the chat for you. Just your address, your specific spot, we'll look at it individually and send you back a blurb on what our expected time frame is. Most of Decatur Island is ready to connect in the next few months through summer. Decatur Northwest is still under construction, so it's going to take a few more months before we're ready to start steering that direction. I would say fall, like October, November for Decatur Northwest area. That'll wrap up that period. Yep.
Is there a charge for bringing it into the house?
For bringing it for installation?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, the first month's service, you have an activation fee with Rock Island, which is $150, and then whatever service level you pick.
Mhm.
So there is that charge when you start service.
But for going from the cable that's outside the house to having the box inside the house, that piece of installation.
That's part of that installation activation cost. Yeah, that all happens if you take service, you pay that piece and that we do the installation. We cover the installation. That fee is not intended to cover our cost of installation. That cost is something we contribute towards the project itself. That's part of our construction incentive that we've had since the beginning of Rock Island at $1,500. We always commit towards the project for connections. But yeah, that turns your service on, is that $150 connection fee and the monthly service rate.
So is it true that you can only bring fiber and conduit to a piece of property that has a structure on it, or can you do it to raw land through the grant?
I can't do it it has to be a BSL, which is a broadband serviceable location. So if it can't take service, then it can't qualify through the grant. Plus, when you go to develop that property, if you have empty property, now chances are you're going to have infrastructure in close proximity, at least to about where your electrical service would be. So when you go to develop, you're going to open a trench to put power, water, everything else in. We're going to give you the conduit. You're going to bring the conduit in, and we're going to do the installation. It really won't be anything more than your developmental costs for the property. But there's really no way for us to stub a conduit up and say, well, here's service for this property. It's technically serviceable as soon as the middle mile infrastructure is in place to extend the last mile to wherever the building, structure, RV, whatever it ends up being, is located.
Got it. Thanks.
Online, Gretchen asks, can homeowners connect the cable using a different ISP?
So technically, over the course of 3 years, there other ISPs are allowed as an open, that's a requirement of the grant. It's an open source. So if another ISP wants to make a connection with Rock Island to then provide service over that's possible. Rock Island is the only ISP that is available for this fiber to deliver the service over this fiber at this period now, though.
Good.
Any other questions? Appreciate them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Back away.
That's really good.
Okay.
Why don't I do a quick little lead in and I want to give you a bigger picture here. I really want to start with a really high level. Now, I guarantee I'm going to get into all the questions, and please just keep asking the questions until I answer them. It's really important to me that I'm clear on that. High level, I want to make sure everyone realizes what's going on in the Pacific Northwest, not just here on Decatur, but all of our region. And I'm going to start there, and then I'm going to kind of funnel down, if you will. In the region, what we're seeing is there's going to be a supply and demand problem when it comes to electricity. It's already evident. We see loss of load. That's what they call it in the industry, loss of load probability. That means you're not going to have electricity if we don't figure out different ways that we could generate power. We know that the Bonneville Power Administration, the dam system that we all benefit from, wonderful, low cost power. We've had it since we've been connected to the Bonneville system through 1951. And it's been a great resource, except for they're not going to be building any more dam systems. So what do we do as a region? And I think that's really going to be interesting for us. When you actually think about different projects that are being proposed, they're all in different stages of, the way I look at it, is not going forward. There's been a big challenge on different projects being challenged for permitting and so forth across the region, across the nation. We're all kind of into that situation. Now, when it comes to Washington State, we're a blue state, right? So we still have all the right things when it comes to carbon reduction. And what we do is, on a state level, we want to get that carbon out of our situation, out of our fuel mix. It's good for the environment if we do. Now, when it comes to how do we provide the power, we don't have the grant funding any longer because that was dried up. But we still got the carbon reduction mandates, and that's a really struggle with us. What that means is a lot of those projects that we're hoping to fill the gap that we're going to be funded through grant funds are not being built. What do we do? Now, I think we're safe when it comes to the core base power that we have. We call that tier one, right? That's what everyone enjoys today. It's the load growth that we're really concerned with. And what I mean by that is any increases in electricity are going to be, where does it come from? And that's a big dilemma for us. I mean, what we see across the region, and you hear about data centers and all kinds of different load increases. We're in favor of that. When you electrify, it's the most efficient form of electricity of heating your home, driving your car, whatever. Electricity is wonderful. But what happens when we don't have that core power? And so what we're struggling with as a utility is, how are we going to keep the power on? And what I think people have what we haven't communicated very well yet, and this is what we're really focusing on, is what do we do if we don't have that load growth power covered? Right now, we're looking at rolling blackouts, and I don't think people really understand the issue that we're faced with. You know, if we don't have that load growth covered, what happens? And so we as a organization see it coming. We look at industry, you know, all the projections that are out there, they're becoming more and more clear that this is really a train that's coming our way that we better figure out. Or we're gonna have, my guess is, if I had to paint a picture, there's gonna be a cold day in January, February. That's where our load is high. And what happens during a cold event is you're gonna have a wind inversion. So wind's gonna go to zero. So all that wind that we've been relying on as a renewable is really gonna not be available. We're gonna have our core, you know, we're still gonna have our core hydro. So we're probably gonna have like rolling blackouts. And what I see is Bonneville going, okay, we're not gonna give you 100% of your power, we'll give you 80. What do we do? So what Robert's gonna do is he's gonna go, wow, I can only go 80. I'm gonna turn this circuit on. This one's gonna be off for 2 hours, or I'm gonna basically shuffle around. But we're gonna try to keep as much power on as we can. But that's the reality that we're faced with. What are we gonna do to combat that? We're trying to build as much renewable generation and battery storage as we can. Daytime, love solar. Nighttime, not so much. You know, what do we do about that? That's where the batteries come into play. So we're trying to figure out how to navigate through that as a co-op and as a region as well. So that's what we're struggling with. And the way I look at it is, I think we need to do a better job, or I need to do a better job of communicating to everybody that if you do nothing, you're gonna have blackouts. And by the way, if you do nothing, then you actually are worse for the environment, because you get a situation where your load growth is gonna be covered by carbon-based fuels, which is worse for the environment. And so we're really trying to do the right thing for the environment, but that means we gotta embrace renewables and batteries, is the way I look at it, in order to make sure that we have reliable power. Now, maybe blackouts are okay. I don't think so. I think that every time there's a blackout, boy, do I hear about it. It's not very fun to be Krista either, when she's like responding to everybody when the power is gonna come back on. But that's kind of where we are.
But we are used to that.
Well,
Wood stoves are for.
I think we've done a really good job of keeping the power on. And I think the people that move into our area look at it just like they would Seattle. I still look at it as, wow, we get power from the mainland through submarine cables and the like. And it's, you know, it's amazing. It's kind of like magic the way I kind of look at it. I think we're getting more and more relying on it. More people are moving in relying on it. And if we don't, I think those blackouts are very real. Now, what I want to do is I want to have a survey. So at the conclusion of this summer, we're going to survey everybody and say, what do you want to do with this dilemma? Is it okay not to build renewable generation locally and maybe have blackouts? Or is it better to build and then avoid those rolling blackouts? And I think that's a dilemma that we're faced with. The thing I want you guys to know is we're just a little co-op, and we're trying to provide reliable power. And it's hard. It's hard when you come into these places and you just want to do the right thing. And we struggled over, Baylor Hill. We're struggling with our title project. There's always a handful of folks that go, gosh, I don't know about, we'd love the concept, just not here. And that's what we're dealing with. And you guys, I don't want you to ever think that Decatur is getting burdened or overburdened by everybody else's nose. And that's really not the case. And I'm gonna, go ahead.
I'm just curious, is small modular nuclear reactors, is that even part of the conversation? Or is that completely off the radar?
You know what, I'm the board president, I just did that little we'll post it on our website. We just did a little interview with, an online publication. And we got into a little bit of that. Small modular, there's nothing small about it, by the way. When you actually look at the size of the facility, boy, if you think that what we're talking about over here in Decatur is, something that would raise a ruckus, boy, that would raise a ruckus.
Yeah.
So I think people come up with really good thoughts, like title. On the surface, you're like, God, you're surrounded by water, it's obvious. But, you can always find something wrong with something, and it's those trade-offs that we're struggling with. Anyway, I just wanted to paint the bigger picture that we're really trying hard. We're trying to grapple with this. We represent the members, and we want to do what you guys want to do as a total. And we're not, it hurts me to think that someone's thinking, that we're trying to do something wrong or nefarious or something, because we're really not. We're really just trying to provide reliable power. The reason that we don't have power for Puget Sound Energy is because it didn't make sense financially, right? So a co-op actually had to step up and provide the power. So that's where we are. Now let me jump into Decatur because I love this question.
Can I ask one high level question?
Sure.
Are there any discussions being held over the increase in energy demand about how to decrease that, about not permitting additional server farms or not, not allowing or just restricting the use of power for these really high energy demand?
I love the question. So the question, if I could rephrase it, is you got all these energy efficiency things that we could do. Why don't we use less power? Is that fair?
Or does not permit the things that are really high power demands, like
Right.
server farms require a ton of it, and we know they have the Northwest for the water.
Unfortunately, we have that cheap power,
Right.
so they've been moving here and
Oh,
doing that.
right.
And if they don't come here, they'll go to Idaho, right? Because Idaho says
Right,
yes to
same
everything.
thing.
So it's a bigger problem.
One thing I want to make sure it's really clear,
And
we
you
are
did.
we are obligated to provide the power, and I don't think everyone really understands it. It's, if somebody wants to hook, I was just having this conversation in the back, it's if somebody wanted to hook up a hot tub and, name your other device that you want, maybe you want a sauna or something else, we are obligated by law to provide that. We can't ration power, we can't not hook you up. And we can guilt you, maybe you shouldn't really need that, but we can't rely on that. We've done a really good job, by the way, over the last decade. I'm actually doing a lot of conservation measures. The numbers are staggering for us. It's close to $10 million on conservation that we've been able to provide our members with through our Switch It Up program. You guys have seen that. It's a really great program. What it is we allow you to put energy efficiency measures in your home, and then you pay it back on your electric bill over 10 years, depending on your measurement. And it's really worked well. We also have that same program available for solar. So if you wanted to put rooftop on, you can do that as well. But what we've seen is we've been relying on that for the last 10 years, but we're seeing the projection of energy uses going so much higher than we ever thought before, is that's just not going to be enough. And we have to do utility scale because it's, we're required to do it. And what we're struggling with is we are obligated to do it, but we need to balance that with where do we site it locally? Because we are all here for the right reasons. We're all here because we love our environment. There's no question about it. Anyway, good question.
Yeah, another high level question about the Bonneville system. That is an aging system. The whole dam system is aging. For the longer term, I read that there are issues about the potential of Bonneville decreasing its productive capacity. And also with climate change, less snowpack and water coming through the system. So are there risks around even that base power load of Bonneville?
Yeah, actually, so the question is about how reliable is the Bonneville power going to be for those that are on Zoom? And the answer is, you're right, it's getting precarious. And I would say that the snowpack is something that I talk about a lot because I don't really know the condition of the dam system and what it takes to maintenance wise. But I know that the snowpack is going to probably disappear, right? You're going to get all that water flow in the beginning of the springtime, but you're really not going to see it at the tail end of the summer. So I think it's going to exacerbate our problem here. For us, we're a winter peaker, and I know it's different over here. Most of you guys are here during the summertime, which is good. In fact, it works well with how to balance your power. But from a winter peaking perspective, we don't have the solar profile here. So if it's exacerbated by Bonneville, then we need to embrace more technology like batteries and so forth that are really expensive. The battery that we have out here, we got grant funding for 1 million of it, and then we had a matching component, but it was a $2 million battery. And that's what
One
gets us
megawatt, right?
for a megawatts worth of power, which is about, what we say, 4 hours in the summertime, you could probably provide in the wintertime. I mean, in the summertime, in the wintertime, probably 2. Right, so if the mainland power went out, what that really means, to make sure I'm really clear, maybe we could squeeze in 4 hours for you guys. And then you could have your power, but as soon as that battery dries up, then you go back down to 0, right? In the wintertime, when the load's higher, because you have the heating load, it'll last less time. The more batteries that we could stack together, the longer we can kind of keep that going. That's that theory of what we're trying to struggle with, is trying to keep that power on 24/7. And anyway, that's really, by the way, we're not planning on a new battery here, but just to make sure.
I just wanted to tag on to the Bonneville question.
Yeah.
Bonneville, in the first Trump administration, there was a push to have commercial rates rather than nonprofit rates from Bonneville. I know that with the new regime in place, they are now, there was a thing that went out April 25th for a 5-year plan. I guess what I'm getting to is, to what extent is there a risk that the administration currently in power will direct Bonneville in ways that will make cost of power or even the availability of power be a problem for us?
My head spins thinking about the current administration and how they take that over. It's hard to even fathom, but what I will say is that when the hydro system was built, and I'll say there was something in 1980, I think is what it was, but it was the Power Act, and that provided us with preferential treatment on that base load that I talked about. So we actually get really low price power. So and that's on a preference basis for us, the local people in the area. And if that went away and they privatized it, then we would lose that preference.
Would it be more like California, where we're like 4 times the rate?
Yeah, I mean, those are the alarming things. I mean, if they privatized or did something like that, our rates, by the way, I talk about blackouts, rates are going up for all the same reasons we're talking about. And we see rates going right now. Just know these numbers in order of magnitude. I know that they're confusing, but we buy power for $40 a megawatt. It's going to double now. It's going to go right now today. That's our base tier 1, probably like 42. It's going to go to it's like already 80. Now we're covered because we got our low base load, right? It's that increment above that we're just starting to feel, and then it's projected by the end of the year to go all the way. In some instances, if it's in a supply demand crunch, 120. So we're talking not only doubling, but tripling in a really short
But
period
we
of time.
could do something if we had the rate structure different. We could take power and do it later in the evening to save money, if I understand the Bonneville rates.
And you don't. It's worse than that, because what Bonneville does is they have one big, how your bill, you have a facility charge and then your kilowatt hour. Bonneville has one big giant facility charge called a composite rate.
Right.
And then they make adjustments on the margins. So we have all the risk.
Okay, so there isn't a possibility to say, if I want to delay using my power, like while doing a washing machine or something later in the evening, there is an ability to actually get that power cheaper, isn't there?
There's a little bit of that. There's a little bit, we can do some peak shavings because we are going to have, it's more expensive power. It's called load shaping charge that we get. It's a really confusing bill. But the load shaping charge, it's not as dramatic as you would think. Okay. We want to cut off those peaks, and we could save. Let me try to make sure that I phrase it right. There's like if there's a really cold day, like in February, we had an outage and we had to pay really expensive because we were above that base load that we have, and the power rates went way through the roof. I mean, we had a charge on our power bill. This is a big number of like $220,000 just for that one day, just for that one occurrence that we had this cold snap.
Right.
And it was, so they're dramatic, so they can get there. I don't want to act like they don't exist.
No, but as an individual level, we can't do that, or can we? Like,
there's not much of an arbitrage that you can do, a little bit, but not much. By the way, they know that too, and the way they structure like the batteries, they don't want to get taken advantage of.
Right.
So they set up our contract.
Okay.
I have a question about the back on the batteries, and that is it possible, I know there was a question about the location between you run the batteries and operation. And there's an analog with our community water system where when we have a failure in the water system, we're all immediately notified of it, and so we can conserve. We had a pump failure last summer, and we were on our tank for several days, but we didn't run out of water because we all were able to conserve Well, if there was notification, there are two things that can happen. There could be voluntary manual reduction in the load, but you don't know that they're on battery. And I know that there also is technology for actual load shedding. Are those things that are looked at?
You know what, I'm gonna, if it's okay, yes, we have Robert can touch on that, but I really want to start with a high level, give a good overview of what the project is. Is it okay if I delay a little bit? I just want to get big picture stuff.
For your service area, where is the expected increase in demand coming from? Is it more people moving to the islands? Is it people here using more electricity? Where is it coming from?
Most of it I see is in a population. You know, it's funny. We don't think they're big numbers, but it's population increase, right? We grow we kind of look at the overall numbers and you say, well, it's probably population increase. And then there's usage profile that goes along with that. But you guys, according to the comp plan, and the county's supposed to provide, by the way, I don't mean to get into this rabbit hole, but the county's supposed to provide a document that we all the utilities and fire people and all the different, industry organizations should follow these metrics. So we have our core, we'll call them Maslow hierarchy of needs, right? The food, water, shelter, all those things should be covered under this comp plan thing. And we should be planning together about what does our sustainable community look like in the future. And so there should be this guiding document, the comp plan. It's a little messed up right now in my mind, because I don't think it's really planning for the right core needs that our community needs desperately. And we're struggling with that. But to answer your question is, they're providing a number that we need to plan for because we can't miss it, right? If we don't have enough power, that's a problem, right? So they provide us with the numbers, 30% load growth. If you're a ferry served island, it goes up to 50%. Most of it's in population. Like Decatur is, and it sounded like 30% growth. Now for you guys, you're not very big, right? So you're 20 people is like 30%. So I mean, it sounds like it's a lot, but it's not really a lot for you guys because your base is so much lower.
Well, I did do a little bit of research into this, and according to a 2024 PNUCC Northwest Regional forecast, a 30% increase in electricity demand across the Northwest is due to data center expansion and high-tech manufacturing growth. That's not happening around here. We don't have a data center. We don't have data centers on the island, and we don't have high-tech manufacturing growth. I mean, we all know that Trump wants to have high-tech manufacturing growth, but it's not. So how can that be what you all are using? I don't understand how you can say 30%, but it's not really what we need.
I think I need to do the math and have you look at it. By the way, I know that report.
Yeah.
If you look at the latest reports, there's the latest, out of the Northwest Power Conservation Council, which is another one good to reference. They're starting this. They used to always say conservation. We were just going to save power. People were going to be encouraged through demand response or whatever. And they're starting to change their tune. So even that report that you referenced for the PNEC it's probably understating what's going on in individual neighborhoods. Now, I'm not suggesting that I want to debate 30% or 20% or whatever. I just know that I need to follow the comp plan, and the comp plan numbers that are mandated on the Growth Management Act are suggesting that population just here is going to grow by 30%.
Here
now,
on this island?
On this island, but it's like 20 people or something crazy.
But those demands of power centers are to Bonneville, and we draw from Bonneville. And so the Bonneville is taking that, and all 120 communities or services use Bonneville. So they are competing directly for that power.
Well said.
So well
said.
Yeah, and so even though we don't have that, other areas will say, no, we want this. And that will draw on power. So we have to negotiate amongst these 120 communities to have a value and say, hey, wait a second, we exist.
Yeah.
So this is not just Decatur. This is far reaching. People have to rock that. Bonneville is our single fucking source. I'm sorry for the language, but it is.
But let me keep going. There's some other neat. You know what adds up in different ways? I look at it as from a common sense perspective. You guys now have internet. And I've had some anecdotal conversations, and I'm dying to hear from you guys. So has your island changed in the last 10 years? Right. And my guess is, and this is what I've heard the stories of, is there's kind of the old time islanders. I look at Noreen and I think I wanted to say hi to you, but you were stuck in the corner. I couldn't really say. Good to see you. But then you have like some of the newbies that are here, and I'm hearing that there's a little bit of that going on, and then you're starting to see more people.
Why are you looking at me? I've been here for 35 years.
I knew that you were on that. But anyway, so what I look is I see things like the internet, and I love the internet. I think it was the best thing we ever did to navigate through this pandemic. And I had some person call me once, and they said, "Hey, I'm moving to your area. Does your internet work?" And I go, "God, we just started this new internet company." And they said, "Well, I'm going to be on Decatur." I'm like, "You might wanted to check that before you've moved and start renting your place." And then lo and behold, you guys got it. So I think that you're probably gonna be surprised a little bit on what your electric usage is gonna be.
Got a question in the chat from Ayana Berkshire. She said, "Thank you for hosting the meeting. Can you speak to the future submarine cable replacement, repair, expansion costs, and the potential cost to the users?"
You know what, that's a great question. So does everyone know how? Can I delay you? I know you have your hand. What I always need to make sure that I have a reference point is we got our cables. Our first cable was through Bonneville Power Administration. It was in 1951. And I look at it was kind of a curse because they go, "Here, it runs through Decatur and it ends over on Lopez." And they go, here. And then we as a co-op had to take all the financial responsibility from that point on and distribute it amongst the 20 islands that we serve today. It was dramatic. I mean, it was really a big effort. And the only thing that worked was that we were a co-op that we could actually navigate through that. We were so upside down financially, but the co-op program, the model worked so well that that's what we rely on today as being a co-op, and that's why we benefit. Now we're at a different crossroads now. The two cables that are feeding us, great question, are basically one of them is 41 years old. That's kind of old for a cable that's been in salt water. Then the other one is like 25. So what we're doing is we've been, we thought that there was going to be a bunch of grant stuff. We got it really well for the internet. We put in grants for new submarine cable. Nothing. We didn't even get help from Bonneville. And we thought for sure it was a natural for us. But, we got responses back that basically said, really expensive. It's like $100 to $125 million is what the estimate that I have in my head for a submarine cable that goes from here to the mainland. That's really expensive for a little tiny co-op. And we're working with Bonneville right now, trying to navigate through what does that replacement look like. They've been providing it since 1951. There's rumblings that they were, rethinking whether or not we should be paying that on our own. Holy smokes. And we rely on that cable. More than you can imagine. I mean, 99% of our power is coming through there. And even if we embrace this load growth component that we're talking about, it's just a fraction of what we could do locally. So we really need that cable dramatically. And we're going to be working through the next, I'd say, couple of years trying to get commitments from Bonneville to replace that.
Well, Foster, we have her question, and maybe we should go into specifics on Decatur, so, because we could talk this regional issue, and Foster loves this topic, he'll talk it all day long, but I think we were here for Decatur.
I got a hand over here that I got.
My question was, can you define just really what area Opelka serves, and also tell us, you mentioned that our expected power usage increase is 30% over the next period of time. How does that compare with the other areas you serve?
So Decatur, I look at, you guys have such a small load right here. So 30% sounds like a lot, but it's really not in terms of usage and how you profile it. Ferry served islands are probably looking more like 50%, right? Because we're gonna have to charge electric ferries when they show up. That's daunting. I mean, think about the energy load. You could just imagine that, we have the spike when you plug in one ferry, it takes our grid and just takes it to another level.
They should put solar on their islands to cover that.
Hey, by the way, they should, and I don't have any problem about that at all.
We have some, and it's ugly.
Can I jump into some of the particulars? So I don't know, Robert, if you want to kind of jump up here with me. Sure. We're talking about, I just want to make sure we're talking in general, if you guys can read this. And so what we're looking at is a Decatur solar expansion. Again, it's not a new battery. We're just talking about the existing battery that's there. But if you want to highlight.
Oh, just
Robert,
so
how big is it and so forth?
So for the new solar array, it's gonna be
Hold
about,
up higher. Yeah, hold it
oh,
up.
there you
Thank
go. So new solar array is about 2.1 megawatts. So the existing one that we currently have there right now is 0.37, 0.38. So to give you kind of an idea of, the size of the solar array, solar production, 3.3 gigawatt hours annually, or megawatt hours annually, right?
Yeah.
Megawatts.
This information will be on our website too, so like, if you want to look back at it, we'll have a problem.
So we cover about 1.4% of the Palco's annual load. Lifespan is about 25 years. We have the existing 1 megawatt, 2 megawatt hour battery that you guys have there right now. And that has a 13-year expected lifespan. So that's part of the grant piece.
So love this part.
And it's also a lithium iron phosphate. So from a battery chemistry standpoint, it's not like your like a Tesla battery is a lithium ion cobalt.
It's not like the golf cart that just.
So you have different types of battery technology. So lithium iron phosphate is supposed to be less reactive. There's also from a fire suppression standpoint, there's a statics. It's like a dry type chemical in there that would extinguish the fire. And then as far as the solar, we're getting $1 million grant for the solar to allocate to low income. Those are the kind of the key highlights of it.
I don't know exactly where to put this.
I'll put it up. Do you want
That
to do the
says
math?
low income programs, but before you said low income people, which is really different.
Low income programs, correct, yeah.
No,
Can I?
all the stuff before said low income individuals and community, not programs, which is totally different.
Yeah, let me make sure I'm clear then. If there was. We need to fix any information that it's not accurate, but let me go through our programs. So I'm really proud of our low income programs as a cooperative. I think it's one of the best cooperatives in really banding together and serving the people in need in our community. And we do a really good job. We have two of them. One is PAL. If you're familiar with that one, that you round up. How many people are a part of PAL? You round up on your bill and then it goes in to help people in need. Like it's like a seasonal thing. Like when you get into the cold weather, we have like one time only where we'll help somebody and pay off like $100 to $200, $150 on a bill. And it's a one time only. And then we have a second program. It's called EAP, Energy Assistance Program. And what that is, something that occurs for 12 months out of the year. And you see a little line item on everyone's bill. It's called EAP. And everyone has a little tiny amount that we collect, and that goes to our low income programs. It serves between 300 to 500 people. We did a little bit more than that when it came to the pandemic. And it's been a really good program. I know that Washington State is really pushing those, low income program attributes, and we've been doing our fair share. And I think we've been doing a good job. So the neat thing about the low income portion of this is when we do a solar array, we actually sign a power purchase agreement with the array. And if there's any power generated, the co-op buys that power that's generated. So if there's $1 million worth of a grant, we take the allocation of that $1 million of that solar, we buy that in terms of the power, and then the revenue that was collected when we buy it goes into the low income program that feeds the whole program. So it's a program basis.
Okay, that's fine. It's just not what you all have been saying, what it is.
We gotta
But that's
fix it.
okay, yeah.
Yeah, we gotta
Just fix
fix
it. Yes.
This is a really good one to, wait, let's go with one first. This is the configuration. Let me touch on that one a little bit.
Which one?
Annual.
This one?
We talked about, I just wanted to make sure that I graphically said it. So this is what this represents is.
You hold it up, sorry.
You got it, thank you. Yep. So what this represents is basically our current load at Decatur. Right, and then we got the community solar. So this is these are where we are today. This is the expanded area that we're talking about today. So if you looked at, someone came to the question of, are you overburdening Decatur? Because San Juan said no on Baylor Hill. By the way, we're not done with them. We have about probably over 30 of these microgrids that we need throughout our service territory just to cover the load growth that we need. Probably even more once we get into electric ferries, if that ever comes. There's debate on that.
But you haven't installed anyone other than Decatur. We're the only one current, correct?
You bet, they got their moments coming, because, well, so let me get back into this, and then I'll answer your question. So what we see is, okay, if you put it on Decatur, you guys are such ahead of the curve. This is what we're saying that your estimated load growth is, that 30% that we talked about earlier, that's your number. You got it. This is your average production now that you can actually get. So you guys are really dialed in. You guys are ahead of the curve. Yes, you have it first. There's no question about it. This, in my mind, is the perfect setup. Now, what I would like to do is I'd like to turn you guys into the model example of how we need to replicate this throughout our service territory. I really need that, and I want to perfect it. I want to perfect it here. I want to do a bang up job. I want you guys to be proud of it. It's going to serve you guys. By the way, load works, engineer. It goes, your electrons follow your load. You guys are the closest to it. These electrons are really going to be serving you guys.
Foster.
Yeah.
Pat O'Hara has had her hand raised on chat for a while. Could you ask her? Pat needs to unmute herself.
Yeah.
I just did.
Great.
My question is, I sat through the first meeting and you talked about Baylor Hill and you showed a picture of Baylor Hill. Baylor Hill looked like a cleared top of a hill with a field. On Decatur, there's a lot of trees dying due to the droughts we've had over the last 10 years ago. Have you done any kind of environmental study of removing all those trees? And it seems a little counterintuitive to me to remove a bunch of trees when you had a cleared field to be able to put this on.
Yes, we did have ESA look at the environmental piece of it. They also looked at archaeological standpoint. So all this stuff has to go through permitting processes and the first step process going through.
So just remember that we have to embrace over 30 of these microgrids. And believe me, San Juan has to embrace their fair share. They have way more load than we do. We know about the ferries, that Orcas is in pretty much the same boat. And I think that we all need to have that conversation as a co-op and say, how does this work? And if this was over, by the way, if this was, we were talking to overburdening you, I wouldn't be here today. And I really mean that. I wouldn't be here. If we were overburdening you, I wouldn't think that was the right thing to do. But if I could turn this into a big pilot win, showcase this across our community, you guys are going to be the ones that have, in my mind, I'm going to try everything I possibly can to make sure you guys are squared away, that you guys have the power. And the reason I say that is because I want to showcase it. Now, let me go through to answer the question about the environmental. So what we've looked here, and this is really hard, you guys are probably going to have to come up after the fact, but we've done a wetland delineation. And the wetland areas, and here's our existing, right? You know where that is. So you got, basically, you got your Decatur head right here, arbitrage going down. And what we got is this whole area is pretty wet. What that really translates to is we look at the wetland, and what we do is we look at the setbacks that are required in your wetland. So it's not just the wetland itself, it's both. If I had to, I think there was concern about, are you going to clear cut? The answer is no, we can't. We got a wetland that's blobbed here. Here's a delineation with the setbacks. There's another one located right here we got to pay attention to. And that's really what's dictating where it goes. Now, what you're going to see is, I have this really neat, you're going to have to kind of imagine it with me, but I see that the solar panels kind of weave into the wetland areas where we can, and we stay out of the buffers and so forth. But overall, it's not a clear cut. We're going to protect the wetland. In fact, we're going to be doing a really good job of fencing within that area. This area, you're going to see the same tree set that's there. Now you're also going to, down here, probably not so much. We got to figure out work with you guys to figure out the aesthetics along this zone, because that's real. But I want to lose that concept that we're not going to clear cut. We're going to be extremely sensitive to the wetland areas.
I really feel like, I'm speaking for myself, but I feel like you're really working hard to sell this, and like it's pretty clear that nobody here wants it. Oh, some of us don't want it. You've done really nothing to make that look good. It looks like crap. it's always looked like crap. You guys don't mow it, you don't put nothing. It just looked bad all the time. And if there's ever gonna be a nucleus on this island, it's gonna be here.
And I'm gonna do a better job, and
How
that's
do
a
we
fair-
know that? I mean,
You're gonna-
utility always passes shit when utility needs it. They find ways around.
I think, just listen.
Oh, I've been
think-
listening.
Oh, okay, good. So what we're gonna do is we wanna showcase this, and I'm really meaning this. If we got 30 of these to build throughout our service territory, 30. The first one out of the gate may be pretty darn good, because I got a lot of talking to do in different groups like this. And if I don't do the right thing, it's just not gonna happen. And I don't think the rolling blackouts really make any sense. I think if we can get out in front of this, we need to do whatever we need to do. Yeah.
2 points. Had you considered, and you probably have, the area where the power lines are that's already cleared in the sun for most of the time? And you've already.
No, you got a whole road.
All the way.
You got.
Are you talking here?
No, the whole island is covered with your clear
Where the
cuts.
lines are, right?
Oh, those are, you're talking about Bonneville Power, yeah, Bonneville Power, that's their easement.
Blakely.
That's a beautiful line for that.
Goes up and.
We go up there and point it out.
I know, you're talking about here.
Yeah, it goes all the way down.
Well, I can't see what you're pointing because you're pointing behind. her.
So, sorry. So you're talking about, there's a transmission right away here, that's
No.
PPA's. And then there's the one that goes towards Blakely.
Then going to the north.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's the one that goes to Blakely.
It's already
Yes.
clear, why not use it?
Even if it's the Bonneville power line.
Yeah.
I can put it that way.
Much better choice.
For us, in terms of choice, really expanding the existing one is really where we were going with it. And if you have, we could actually do some studies and see what's available.
Right, I know.
I don't think that's a bad.
Why? We're asking why not use that, so that's, we understand that you wanna use this. but
Wait, okay,
why-
let's do one at a time, you guys. This guy was making his comments, so make your
Just
second
basically
comment.
wanted to talk about the alternative of doing that, because there's so much opposition to cutting trees. When that area is already cleared all the way over, and there's already sun exposure associated with that, because it goes to the north.
Okay.
And so that exposure and that land is already allocated for power, and it's just bald. There's nothing
So
there.
we-
So that's the first.
Let's ask the engineer for, okay.
Just one thing I would comment on that, just from so having like a long area, right? So one of the downsides is construction, so you're gonna have to put distribution grid all the way through there, right? Which you can do, there's already the underbuilt there.
Right.
So now you're going with a kind of a narrow.
It's fairly wide, actually.
Yeah,
Right.
but you're still gonna have you're gonna have to set your inverters differently,
But you're not far from the actual array over here.
Yeah.
Because it's just literally on the other side of the store. Is the access to that?
I get what you're saying, because we have the big easement to go across it. I don't think that's a bad question at all. I think that's actually a pretty good one. I would look at the way we're trying to figure out is how do you economies of scale it and then weave it in. So I don't think that what you're bringing up is a bad thing.
So that was my first point, because, and with the idea that it might reduce the amount of land that you actually clear in order to make room for those new panels. That's the first thing. The second thing is, you're talking about the setbacks around the areas that you're proposing. And you're saying you probably won't even be able to see like a certain amount of trees. What is your normal setback from the roads? When you drive by, how much of that timber is basically, the trees are still going to be left? And when do you start opening up the other part?
You're talking
Like
this
if you're
area
going
right
down
here.
Thatcher Path Road.
Yeah, right here.
The other one.
This, by the way, this is the county's public works yard.
Right,
just to make sure.
the other road.
And they're still gonna maintain this area.
The other road.
The other road.
Are you talking here?
Yes.
Right here, this is the wetland area.
Okay.
Make sure I got it. So
That's
this area
where
right here, we're
That's
not,
where the buildings are, right here.
yeah, we're not gonna be disturbing any of the plant lice and the buildings in there. The Clovis, by the way, are still controlling the buildings.
Right, I understand that. I thought there was another section of this plan that was to the south of like Carol Campbell's property.
Armitage.
No, it's not Armitage.
Armitage.
Armitage is to the west. I'm talking about Thatcher Pass Road.
You said that's wetlands.
The lower section.
This right here.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah, this is all wetland.
Oh, okay.
So how do you buffer from Armitage or the,
This right here is where we're gonna have to do, it's really this area right here. And then work with the county for the public works side. But yeah, we need to put in some good landscaping. We're gonna make sure that we got the buffer. Where there's a requirement for us to fence.
No, 40 feet buffer from the county.
And then there's a requirement for us to put the fence.
Yeah, yeah.
40 feet.
Yeah.
Could trees stay in that 40 feet so we don't see that?
Well, trees and solar don't necessarily in this area go well together.
But we'll look at some.
I mean, throw some
maybe
over.
shrubs, yeah.
The thing that we actually are gonna be doing is a water study, right? We're gonna have to look and see how the water goes. Now, that was a really good question for stormwater maintenance and where's that gonna go? I know this personally. What I did is the county required me, I wanted to build a place for my grandparents. And I wanted to build it really close to our house and they made me move trees or remove trees. Those trees, they drink like 20 gallons of water. And I found out because it was real and I had hydro, issues going on in my soil. So we're gonna make sure that we're very diligent. We know there's wetland areas. We gotta figure out how we optimize that and really protect the wetland and make sure that we don't negatively impact or, run it onto someone else's property. We wanna make sure that we do that. So we're gonna go through a whole stormwater program and take it very serious like we do all those things. But good question that was raised.
Okay, I see a couple people have already asked questions. There's anyone else who wants to, you wanna make your?
Yeah, I have rather than a question, I have some comments, if I may.
Yeah.
And this, I think, really. Can you speak up, please, so hold it here. I'm sorry, my voice isn't very well. My name is Charlie Conway. I live in Decatur Shores on the east side of the airport.
By the way, we got your write-up.
Yes.
That was a really great write-up. Thank you for your help.
So I just have to summarize a little bit of what is in that. I've talked to a lot of people on that, including many of you, and our friends and neighbors. And they range in their attitudes toward this to people who are completely already totally opposed to it, and I'm pretty sure they always will be, all the way to people who are ready to be all in. I'm not in either of those categories. I'm inclined to support the project, but I need certain things, hear certain things from Topco to understand the nature of the proposal so I can make a decision. And I think there are probably a lot of people that are in that camp.
You bet.
So what I'd like to do is just briefly, I think what I've heard from people, the concerns fall into four major categories. One is people are very protective of the character of this island, and rightly so. And they're concerned that this project is going to destroy the character of the island. And the character of the uplands here is that it's a wooded. If you walk around the loop of Rose, Armitage, and down that fast around, it's just beautiful. I do that as a walk in the morning often. It's narrow gravel roads with the trees on either side. And that's what the character of this place is. So in my view, when you're developing this, if you're talking about screening and landscaping, that's missing the point for a lot of people around the island.
Right.
No matter how beautiful landscaping is, if you take down the trees, it's changing the character of the island. So for me, I think the extent possible, woodland buffer should be preserved on all sides of the project. And the idea that Rod had, maybe some of these panels that are showing down there in Armitage, a small number of them could be moved up into the power line area so that a woodland buffer could be preserved there. So your design team and you are going to have to work that out, but.
That's good feedback, by the way. We're not opposed to those thoughts.
The other thing is, the next major category that I've heard is the risk of wildfire. Our island is unprotected by a personal fire department. We are served by DNR, but they can be a day or two out. And as we saw in California, during hot, windy conditions, which we have here because of climate change, wildfires that get started can move extremely fast. And so I know there are ways to mitigate the risks of fire, but we need to understand exactly what the risks are on your proposal and how they're going to be mitigated. So what I'm advocating there is that you have the right people on board on your design team on the electrical side to understand what electrical faults can happen in panels, what electrical faults can happen in batteries, and how they're going to be passively mitigated so we don't depend on fire services that could be 48 hours out to put out the fire because that's going to be too late.
Can I address that one at a time? All right. The fire that. You know what, I was doing my own homework, you know, leading up to this, because we take that serious. I came out of Southern California and the latest wildfires that were going on were literally 2 streets from where the big Eaton Canyon fire was. It literally was right there. So I take wildfires very serious, and I think there's this whole community, not just Decatur, is in danger. You know, and I think, you know, there's certain times when, you know, we have a lot of moisture out here 9 months out of the year. It's those the little window periods that we have during the summertime. I look at it and I go, wow, we're a tinderbox out here. And I think that we as a community really, you know, as a county especially, and I think the county members, I don't know if they're here or not, but I think that we have a really big, there we go. Come on in. Anyway, so I think that we have something that we need to think about in terms of, I mean, we've seen the stuff in Maui, we've seen the stuff in Southern California, we've seen it in North Carolina. If we don't take this serious, that's one of those Maslow hierarchy of needs. It's one of those fundamental principles that we need to figure out. We can't go business as usual at all. And so I don't want anyone to think that we're taking this, you know, lightly by any stretch of the imagination. I do not want to see our utility on the list of some of the other utilities get accused of wildfires. It's just not going to be in my, you know, my wheelhouse. I see, anyway, so the answer to your question is, we take it really serious. What I see is my research, and I'll put it online and whatever we get to, it's, if I had to rank what causes a forest fire, solar panels is not very high. Cooking, you know, man stuff that we go through with, you know, barbecuing and everything else outside, and we all like our campfires and so forth. But if you look at whatever the causes that go along with that, we got to take that into a bigger picture. And I know you guys were, and I don't know what happened, well, you guys can tell me, but what about that fire district you guys were talking about? Is that real or?
Can we, that's a really good topic, but not what we're talking about today. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm feeling like you're taking up a lot of time here, I get a lot of questions, and he has.
Can I just say one thing from a electrical standpoint? So, I mean, electrical, right? You're always gonna have fire risks, no matter what. The resters go.
We saw it this morning.
Right.
Electric vehicle versus.
No, I'm saying from the electric system, right? You got high voltage lines, you got medium distribution voltage lines. So the key is protection and trying to open that stuff as fast as you can. So that's why we've implemented high impedance fault detection. In the summer, we disable reclosing. Reclosing is a really important thing in the wintertime. So it allows us to energize a line pretty quickly so that, you know, it minimizes the outage time and not having to, you know, send a crew out to say Blakely or something. We can make sure to try to mitigate these things. And that's the same thing with like Decatur. There's a dedicated breaker for the battery. There's a dedicated breaker for the solar. Any new solar would have dedicated breakers, which would open up.
So it's like your home. It's like your home. You have your breakers on there. What we do is we set those very sensitively and make sure that if there's ever something going on, those things trip off. There's also the way that you manufacture. During my homework, I was asking about solar panels and, you know, what's the risk? The risk is they're not installed right. The risk is they're not using the right parts and pieces. And we can do that with inspection. We have to make sure that we use metal conduit when we connect them to make sure that rodents don't get in and start eating away. So I think you're right. I think there's a way to mitigate it. We got to commit to that and communicate to you, everybody, how serious we're taking.
Okay, what? I really would like to finish. I don't intend to suggest that you're not taking anything seriously. I believe that you are. But what I need is to hear, and there are a lot of very smart, very thoughtful, very interested people. Don't worry about getting down in the weeds. Tell us what all the risks are and tell us how you're going to mitigate them so we understand. It's not enough to just say, oh, I take this seriously because I used to live in California. That's not going to cut it here. We need to understand exactly what you think the risks are and how you're going to mitigate them. Hearing about how the park fault workers work or whatever is what we want to hear. And so we have a chance to understand it and hand it away. The next thing is stormwater. Removing so many trees and putting so much, you know, up to 6 acres of impervious surface on this island that's the biggest increase in impervious surface outside of the roadways it's ever been done here. And so I know that there are ways to mitigate stormwater, and we have wetlands on the site, which is helpful in that as well. But turn it up a little bit. Yeah, But the problem with our soils here is, even if we control surface runoff, the subsurface hydrology is such that there's a permeable layer on top of clay, which leads right to my front door, actually. And there may be ways to mitigate increased infiltration that will control that, but we need to know that you understand it's a problem, you have the right experts on board to provide the right mitigation that will help to control that, because it's a real problem.
Can I get that one real quick?
Sure.
So we're at the beginning stage, maybe we should have started there. We're at the beginning stage of doing the building permit, right? So we got a long way to go, right? What we're trying to do is we're trying to get out and have these conversations so we know if there's anything we can do to improve it. We're gonna get stormwater, we're gonna get industry experts. It's gonna be a plan that's gonna have to be submitted during our permitting process. We're gonna follow the, NEPA, SEPA, wetland. I mean, all those different reports are gonna be generated, including a stormwater prevention plan that the county won't approve unless it's gonna work.
Will that be additional use permit or provisional?
Come back to the permitting, forgive me, I just would like to finish my statement.
Yeah.
I appreciate what you're saying. What I'm suggesting is that I would rather that you not do everything done and put it in for permit before you share the details.
No doubt.
As you're getting the information, please share it with us so we understand. And see, if it's preliminary, we understand it's preliminary, but we need to understand how it's being dealt with, before the permitting process. So we have assurance that which way you're going to mitigate.
Are you good if we put on our website and we put all the reports and make sure we label them and document and send out updates to you guys?
It would be prior to action.
Yeah. Sure, yeah,
It
absolutely.
needs to be prior to action. That's transparency.
No doubt.
That's what we're looking for.
I agree.
So the last thing, and I'll try to wrap up here, are construction impacts. And that includes road dust, traffic, noise, congestion at the ramp, and bar capacity. And I know that you made some statements about, well, the roads are the county's responsibility. Well, they are, but if you have a project of this magnitude, you can write into the general contract requirements that the general contractor has to provide supplementary dust control. They have to have a traffic management plan. They have to have speed limits. They have to work to make sure there's no parking at the ramp. All those things are things that you can proactively do without the county, because we don't have a lot of experience with the county being responsive to us on this island, to be perfectly honest. That can help that situation. You can have our backs by enforcing it on your contractor if that's sufficient.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Anything to do with the project and the construction of it, we own that. I mean, there's no question about it. My comment, I'm sorry, it came across as something that's other than that. But during construction and everything that during that building process, we're gonna be going down that road, exactly how you pointed out.
Okay, let's go.
I'll wrap up very briefly. I just have a quick list of things that I think that would help me to understand and be able to support the project. That is to make sure you have the right subject matter experts on your design team. And I have a list I can give to you, architects and civil engineers and so forth. And then creating a preliminary design, you showed one very preliminary here. As soon as possible, get it out in front of us so we can start to look at it and respond to it, knowing it's preliminary. And a draft of a mitigation plan that we can all start, and with the details, with the technical details, so we can see what's actually happening.
Wayne's totally fair.
And then make another problem this has already been alluded to. People in the community feel that there were commitments made after the last installation that were not honored by Oconto. No, the history of that and what is true, but there's a lot of misunderstanding and ill feeling about that. And I think if there's a way that you can have a website page or a formal document that actually outlines as they're developed during the design process, what the commitments to the community are, that's permanent. So if that question ever arises 10 years down the road, we can say, here's the commitments and here's what we did. Then I think there'll be a much higher level of trust in the community.
And I'm dedicated to doing that. There's no question about it. I'm gonna be extremely transparent, put everything on the website.
I'll sit down. Please contact all of the actual or surrounding homeowners and property owners who are adjacent to the parcel or across the road, and offer to meet with them individually on their properties and ask them what their thoughts are.
Again, fair.
Thank you very much.
Online question. We've
got several online. One person has asked a few times, did I hear them say a handful of people always oppose, the majority of Decatur does not approve, 160 signatures opposing so far. They also said, same person said there's been fires over 80 acres on Decatur at White Cliff.
Is there a question or is
Do
that
you
just a
have a-
comment?
That's the comment.
Okay.
Mark Wall says, sorry, 1 second. Opelka has lost public trust for many islanders.
Well, just, if there's a question, yeah, let's get to that.
Okay, and then, can you please speak to how this project will possibly violate the Washington State HEAL Act, SB 5141?
I have no idea.
We don't know what that is.
But I could do some homework and research and get back to it. You know, there's one other thought that I had. You guys asked about the area that we have the right of way. I am gonna look into that. We don't own that property. Those are easements. And so
You own, for the 17 acres in the back.
the one that goes straight down towards
North
Blakely.
side.
It crosses my property and I'd be in favor of the panels being there and it'd be on my property, no further compensation, but I would be fine with that.
Okay, but just know in terms of of that area, it's going the wrong way kind of thing. It's hard to get the solar that goes down that slope. So I'm just saying, we don't own, you know, that whole area that goes across the island, we just don't own that. So I didn't know if that was one of the indicators.
Yeah, so that was one of the questions that I had was about that portion, and the other one was in looking at alternatives to the plan that you're considering.
Yeah.
On areas that are already cleared, and please, somebody stop me here, and rather than biting my head off about it, but it came up in discussions before about the airstrip at Decatur Northwest that's not used, but it's already cleared and in the sun all of the time. So I'm just trying to, if that's not allowed and it's something that Decatur Northwest doesn't want to, what, I'm just trying to look at alternatives rather than cutting down a whole bunch of trees.
Great.
Decatur Northwest.
We'll be in contact, I guess.
All right, we haven't heard from you.
I'm wondering, you've spoken a lot about your obligation to build these 30 microgrids throughout the islands, but I wonder why build solar in Western Washington at all? I mean, I know you might not work so closely with the adjacent grids, but the American electrical grid is the biggest machine on the planet. Have you been to Eastern Washington? Have you seen their massive swaths of grass? That'd be a better place to be building solar if you insist on doing it in Washington State. But that brings me into my question of, if it's a matter of getting power from A to B, which can be colossal, that big cable that runs here, I mean, what capacity of it are we using? Are we close? Would we have to expand it if we can't generate the power somewhere else, which we're probably gonna have to?
Yeah, we're always gonna need the cables. The cable, right now we have, I touched on it earlier, I don't think you're in the room. There's one of them cable is 41 years old, so that's coming up on its life. And the other one is a 69 cable that's 25 years old. That one's actually coming up on capacity. We have, you know, what are the numbers? We have a cap on our Bonneville Power Administration in terms of the capacity of that cable. It's 100. And I think the last peak that we had on one of those cold winter nights was approaching the 100 mark. So we're reaching the capacity of that.
Yeah, so there's two cables and the idea is redundancy, right? So one cable is rated, it's 150 megawatts and one's 100 megawatts. So you got to take the lower of the two. If one fails, you have 100 megawatt capacity.
So it's either generate the power here or get it here. I'm just saying solar, like this kind of weather is not a freak incident.
So the thing that we struggle with is, what are the alternatives? We hear, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, but what do you do? I mean, we don't have natural gas here, nor, you know, it's actually, you know, being penalized on a statewide level. We don't have a lot of options. We looked at tidal, we're still looking at tidal. That's a hard one. By the way, the group in here is probably equal to what we probably would have when we have a tidal discussion as well. And there's not a lot of alternatives for us to consider. What I didn't bring up, and I did a little sidebar with someone else since I forgot about it, is does everyone know that we're obligated to provide the power but by law? I mean, if you guys want to hook up a hot tub, you know, anything, we have to make those hookups. And we can't arbitrarily, or we can't ration power, even though it makes sense. It's like, why are we wasting all the power that we do? I don't disagree with what you're saying is, but we in the utility, we don't have the ability to ration that power in any way, shape or form. So that's one of those things that we got to find it somewhere. And so we're exploring all the alternatives. They're not a lot.
You had touched on something before, maybe.
Donnie's had her hand
Oh,
up.
sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In the February meeting, you said something about starting on the county side would kind of grease the permitting process. And so will that be a conditional use permit? I know the original solar installation was done under a provisional permit, which is not what the land use table says, RGU. That, for a commercial power facility in RGU, it's supposed to be a conditional use permit, which is designed to answer all the questions that Charlie has brought up, those questions. So you said you're starting the permit process. Is it what is the process? Conditional use?
Yeah, right before, I'm gonna end with answering your question. Right now, we're going through all the reports of, wetland studies, and we delineated. We're gonna do the same thing with stormwater, building permits, clearing, SHPO, which is archaeological. We're gonna go through all of those reports. That's gonna be the application that we're in the process. It's gonna have the design component, the aesthetic, all those reports are gonna be done during the building permit side. Then what we do is I think the one over here was an ancillary use because we have an existing substation. So I don't know exactly how the county is gonna review that, but they don't know what to do until they see the application. So I don't know exactly whether it's gonna be a CUP or it's gonna be an ancillary use.
So that would be a question for the county at the meeting on the 20th.
And they're not gonna know until we submit an application,
Well,
until
it
they
says on
review
the
it.
table that is the process. It's not a C/P. It's simply a conditional use permit. You were able to get the other one in because you cited an ancillary use, but those panels really are a commercial, power generating facility. And so it seems like there is on the table, there is an option P/C.
Right.
But that's not what the power generating facility requires. It is simply a conditional use permit. There's no provision for provisional.
The other one I don't know is, and I don't know until, the county's gonna tell us what we did. When we submitted different permit applications, it may change along the way. I don't know, since the county owns part of it, the area that we're talking about where the public works yard is, that may be treated differently too. So I don't have an answer to your question, but
The Baylor Hill was a conditional use permit.
Baylor Hill was a conditional use permit question.
Okay, who's got the next question? George?
I heard a term earlier, old timers, and I guess on the top of the list. Unfortunately, and everybody that's on Decatur knows me. So I've been here for almost 60 years, and I own most of the land between the two developments, Decatur Northwest and Decatur Shores. And each of them is about 600 acres, it takes up about half the island. And anyway, so we have that big piece of land. My wife's family homesteaded here in the 1870s. And so we've been very conscious about our ownership of the land, and we've never had any logging done. But Karen and I and our family, we've never had any logging done. And so that's, we like to preserve the rural character of Decatur. But so that's just, I want to make that statement about who I am and why I would have anything to say about this power project. But and one other point, I worked for the power company for over 50 years, and I've worked for Bonneville on every one of their cables, and I've worked on not 1951, all the ones for the last 6 years. But and lots of other Bonnevilles. And I worked for the phone company. I was a prime contractor for the phone company. I laid a fiber optic cable. The first one in San Juan County, low tide to low tide across Decatur. And anyway, so we don't want to be the pilot project for 875 acres more of panels in San Juan County. To me, that's the kind of notion that building bridges throughout the San Juan Islands that's been brought up in the past. It's like because that's kind of a just absolutely no, it's a non-starter. So I'm opposed to it here on Decatur. I'm opposed to it on all the rest of the islands. And so the big picture here is the need for electricity. And we got our cable, we get our electricity, 98% from Bonneville. And Bonneville, they're going to get new sources of power other than hydro. They're building hundreds of new nuclear plants all around the world now, hundreds of them all around the world. And there's been a lot of new development for geothermal because of the new fracking technology. So Bonneville is going to continue to give us all the power we need, and we need a new cable. They'll install it.
We do need the new cable. They're not going to provide the power that we need. Go talk to John Hairston and ask him, I think they're prohibited in the way they were formed to do generation now. That's further than they have. So they're not going to be building anything new. What they will do is they'll buy a power contract. And that contract is going to go based on the supply and demand. So it's going to be our tier 2 power that we get, that preferential power that's really low. That load, they're going to go and buy a contract, but it's going to be on that higher price premium that's going to be pretty dramatic if we can find it.
Yeah.
So there's going to be areas where you're not going to see it. So I questioned a little bit, but by the way, you're in our historic log at the Historic Museum over on Opalco because of all the things you've done over the years.
You don't want to hear you. Can you talk a little louder?
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway, thanks for all your work for Opalco.
And we have another question comment in the back there. You go ahead, Tim.
My wife and I own a house right across from the town. And we've been there for 8 years. Last winter, just touching on the erosion aspect, our utility building flooded. I thought I had a broken water line. My son, water was down there. It wasn't a broken water line. Runoff, again, that we've never had. That's a huge concern because the water goes from my place down to the people below, down to the airfield. And that's just with what's already going on. Now you say you're not going to clear cut. Okay, I look at the solar panels. I don't see a whole lot of trees growing inside them. So maybe it's semantics, well, or creative word uses. No, we won't clear cut. Well, I'm sorry. I walk that road every day. I've lived here for 8 years. This is my home. I don't think any of you live here on Decatur full time. I do. Look out there, this was 20 acres gone, like a forest fire. Only a forest fire, the trees would grow back. This would be permanent. And the damage that does to the environment, nature, totally unacceptable, 100%. And I think you greatly underestimate how many people live on Decatur full time, not investment homes. Not second vacation homes, full time. They feel that strong based on that petition. That alone.
If I could respond, I appreciate this whole room. And I think that it really typifies where we are as a membership. And what I had a good conversation with earlier. It was about I want to do that member survey and I want to come up with some scenarios. And we represent the whole spectrum. And I feel like we're fighting. And the last thing in the world our group wants to do is come in here and act like we're doing some disservice to our community that we serve. And I don't mean to come off as whiny or anything, but it's really a struggle for us. What I want to do is I want to find out what does our overall co-op want to do? And I want to come up with a scenario and say, are you okay with us not doing renewables and having rolling blackouts? And then another scenario that says, no, I would actually like to do the renewables, but we got to figure out how to site them, and come up with some realistic ideas on how do you do this, because it's hard. I mean, there's no question about it. And then I want to survey the membership And let the memberships really like participate in this, so it doesn't look like we're fighting. Because I don't disagree with anybody, and if it turns out that we're fine with rolling blackouts and not building. Boy, that makes sure my life a lot easier. I don't have to go down this road as much as I do.
Okay, we got her too. She was first.
Yeah,
And then-
right here.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not the most tech savvy person, but if you're so set on putting solar in our island or on our island, why don't you take those solar panels and put them on top of everybody's roofs?
Yep.
Barns, sheds, garages, houses, and get you solar power that way instead of decimating our land.
Or on the other 19 islands.
No, we've done a lot of homework, because it's a legitimate question, and what we actually see is our solar profile is like California. They've been doing it for eons, and believe me, I think California's been off at a deep. Okay, so the answer is it doesn't work, it's not enough. We've been working for the last 10 years on energy efficiency and trying to get solar arrays on roofs. We've actually done a really good job. But if you actually look at the solar profile and how much you would generate from all the roofs with all the trees and how much penetration you're gonna get from it, it's gonna provide somewhere between 4 and 5% of what we require. It's not even gonna move the needle. I know there's a misconception out there, and it's hard for us to, we even put a separate quick fact out there to try to explain it, because it's so hard to, but you could look online, because we're trying to be extremely transparent. So you can actually do the analysis that goes along with it and come to that same conclusion, but it's not enough. I wish it were.
We got this.
Hi, I'm Angela. I just wanted to put out there that I think that there are a lot of people on this island who are waiting to learn more and that aren't instinctually opposed to it. But I feel that this is a very controversial topic, that sometimes people are frightened to say that they support something because the people that don't support it are very aggressive and bullying. So I think there's a part of me that just wants to raise my hand and say, hey, I support this. I want you guys to do it thoughtfully. I want you to be transparent. I want you to listen to us. But I just want to put that out there.
If we as a team commit to a version, I haven't read, by the way, you sent a really good write-up, and it was like 17 pages of, it was like 10 o'clock at night, and I was trying to scramble around, but I really thought it had a lot of merit and a lot of transparency. And the thing that I appreciated the most, it said, we're evolving, we're draft. It's okay to say we don't know all that, but we're gonna give you what we do and evolve. And if we can get to that level and keep it really on our website, I really do welcome that. I think that we could do such a better job if we are all in this together. And again, whether you know it or not, I want it to be a success. And I really want you guys to like go, you know what, he lived up to his bargaining. I know you don't trust but verify, I get it, but I really do want to go down that road.
Does the solar panels, the energy that it makes, will it stay on Decatur or will it go to the other islands?
Let me show you the two of them. Okay, so that's a great question, and I want to make sure that we get.
Well, I live in Arizona most of the year, and we have solar farms all around our house, and none of it goes to our neighborhood.
So this is the battery. Let me go with the other one first. Remember, I want to go back there.
Oh, boy. That is cool.
Windmills. Just a reminder, this one we had before, George. What we're saying here is this is our current Decatur usage. And we're saying, or excuse me, this is what we project to be load growth, what we're gonna need with 30% load growth as dictated by the comp plan. And all indicators are in that kind of 30% load growth. It sounds like a lot, but it's really not for Decatur. When we go forward with a new expansion, if we do, it would be just equivalent to what you would be needing. So there's not gonna be more than you need on Decatur. Are you gonna get it? If you want to go from an engineering perspective, why don't you touch on it?
Well, yeah, I mean, power is gonna go wherever it's needed, right? And so obviously, if there's excess production, it's going back on the transmission grid. But, and then the idea is with the battery is, one of the things we would like to do is charge it during the day when you have peak production. So you can actually use the power that's actually locally produced for the battery. But yeah, I mean, electrons are gonna go where they're needed. So
And they go to the closest point,
They're gonna go to
right?
the
So it's
closest
produced
So
here. it's
why
gonna
at
go to
nighttime,
the-
why don't you?
Well, it's kind
touch
of
on
like,
this?
yeah.
So at nighttime, when the sun goes down. I tried to explain this, and I did a miserable job, and I had to bring reinforcements this time, because who knows what there is to know about batteries.
Oh, just going through okay, so there's the existing solar, the 375 kW, the 6 inverters. Pro solar, the 2.1 megawatts. So the transformer, that's your guys' Decatur transformer over here. It's fed from the transmission. We have the battery with the 1 megawatt inverter. And so, so right now we have, sorry, I gotta look at this. This is, so BPA, here's your power from BPA. I'll go.
So it just goes back, really, it just goes back to you.
To the grid.
And
To the grid.
to the grid, and then, so Decatur doesn't use very much.
Well, so
So
Decatur.
it would actually go like to San Juan and Orca.
Well, so, and that's the idea with the battery is, because right now, so a lot of what we do with the battery is discharging it in the mornings and the evenings. Those are our peaks, right? The mornings, especially as you get closer to like your colder mornings, so you're seeing their load pick up. During the day, it drops down. And so you want to discharge during the morning, discharge during the evening.
Our batteries would go to us?
Your batteries would go to you, right?
Now what do you say about discharging? Make sure we're clear. So our submarine cables go to the mainland. So when he says discharge, what it is, it's releasing energy, so it minimizes what goes back to the mainland, not to San Juan, not to Orcas, to the mainland. So our overall peak loads are.
Yeah, exactly. So those are your, and so then what you would do with the solar is during the day, you could charge up the battery with the solar. And you could say, you can easily program it to say, hey, we only want to charge when we're actually getting peak production from the solar, and that would charge the battery. And the battery charges, gets to its, full state of charge, and then use that to discharge in the evening, so much percentage. It's usually like 30-40%, then you use the next one in the morning, then you recharge, and you'll be doing that every day.
So let me try to get, in practice, how does that translate to Decatur? I'm really trying to get to, it's a great question. What kind of reliability increases do I get from the battery? Is that fair? So in practice, if it's in the summertime, we're probably gonna use it for lowering the wear and tear on our submarine cables so they last longer, especially because they're, getting old at capacity. In the wintertime, if we see a storm coming, we're gonna hold back some of that energy that we could serve you guys if there's an outage. Now, as long as the outage isn't on Decatur locally, what we do is, and help me with this one, we would turn off the rest of the circuits, leave you guys on with the battery providing the backup power for your community. And it's here, it's all the rest of those feeders are off and it goes to the load, of Decatur. Now, this is where I want to make sure.
2 hours.
It depends on the time of year, depends on the load.
Winter.
There's also, and so that's where it gets slightly different, right? So if we have a fault on the transmission line, on EPA's transmission line, right? You're trying to open up the main breaker for the substation while also trying to seek it at the same time, which you start talking about operating things in less than a second, right? So you're trying to do all this and that's all automated. And so, the primary use case for this is that transmission deferral, trying to decrease the load on the cable. So these cables are XLPE, which is a type of insulation. And so as your load increases, you're increasing heat. Everything, the electrical system, transformers, cables, it's all heat degradation, right? That's what shortens your life. So extend the life of that.
So do you have any examples that the battery provided power to Decatur only?
Yeah, there was 2 examples. So I believe it was 2021 and 2022 were 2 cases where it worked. Once was, it was the outage. It was 12. It was like midnight. So, which I don't know. Some of you might have noticed it, and others didn't. And it was the first time that we actually had it in operation. And it was more the system was down. We're like, hey, Decatur still got power. The second time was it was in a discharge during peak time, and it just happened to carry it over. So it didn't last very long. It was a pretty short duration as it was kind of nearing the end of that.
Summer or winter?
What's that?
Summer or winter?
They were both winter.
Those were both winter.
Could we circle back to the question I had earlier about load shedding possibility?
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yeah, so load shedding, so from a utility standpoint, the easiest way to load shed is under frequency schemes, right? So we're frequency locked at 60 hertz, meaning, you know, everything is gonna be running at that. If you drop to 59.7, you know, scheme somewhere are shedding, right? And we don't currently use an under frequency scheme on our system, but it's something we could look at. There's risks to that too, right? You know, you can have a disturbance and it can trip.
Even notification.
Oh, the notification for the battery, yeah, and that's something.
The battery, you well, and the battery's gonna last longer if you guys turn off the hot tub.
Yeah, that's something we can look at. I mean, we get everything, all that information comes back into our SCADA system. So it's something that maybe we can look at as far as like a text.
Those are those little wins that I could see showing how we need to do it on a bigger picture, but starting something that, I mean, you don't have a lot of load that goes along with it, and actually using that as an example. You know, the discussion I know I've had many with Tom trying to figure out how to put some on our website so you guys can see when, you know, everyone else is out, you can see the battery working for just Decatur, and I could see extending that, you know, in the future with kind of notifications and some other things, and that would be part of that pilot kind of thought process that we were doing.
So,
Just a quick question following on from the other stuff about the review and the bonding process. You said a lot of this is early in draft, but in the February meeting, you also talked about the grant on these panels that have to be used this year, which is kind of like, okay, we're actually, so can you reconcile the timing, the timeline on all of this, whether there's phases, and is this actually gonna get real reviewed?
Yeah, when I, for those of you that saw the presentation we did, by the way, we were at a stage now where we were just trying to find out, how do we not lose the grant funds? And that's where we came up, like, we're looking under any rock we possibly could. And we really were looking at the grant funds. And now I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's gonna be interesting to see, working with the community. I think that we need to do a really good job of describing this first and then worrying about the grant funds and the low income program as we go. This is more important than making sure we take care of our members. And so that's first priority. Does that help? I sure hope we can make it, by the way.
Not be rushing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is, significant.
oh, sorry, there was a lady behind you, but
Okay.
that's okay, yeah, she hasn't spoken yet, yeah. Yeah, you go first, please.
I just wanted to say, this is a significant project for Decatur, and obviously you hear a lot of comments, your concerns about it, as there should be. But I just want to say I'm proud of Opalco for taking head on the issues with our energy future. Because it's a lot easier to stick your head in the sand, and that's what a lot of utilities do. And thank you for having the gut.
Okay.
I need a commitment from Opalco. Because while I understand that what you're doing is proactive, what I'm also hearing, or it's seeming to me, there's a lot of concern in this room about the trees being cut. And the lack of mitigation of the solar array that is already installed. I would like to know that the concerns that have been brought up here today and the options that have been presented to you about why couldn't we locate them underneath the power lines? It would be harder for you. It's easy for you to take the Baylor Hill and the Loveless property and say, oh, we got a deal. Can we have a commitment from you to seriously look at locating the solar array at other places on the island?
I do want to put, I appreciate the claps, and the engagement process is required for me. And I really do want to look in your eyes and be like, I want you guys to be proud. If you have creative ideas, we need to think about it. If we need to meet with the members that are next door adjacent, they're the ones that are first impacted. So you got my commitment. I've learned a lot, I've done a lot of research on our existing one that we did. And I look under there and I'm like, yeah, we're not mowing that. And then I ask about it. And it's hard to get, I need your help too. It's like, it's hard to get people to mow around here. I know that we had one gentleman that was, he had a remote control.
That was this gentleman.
There was a remote control. I love the idea, remote control, something, but for some reason, I don't know, you probably know, it didn't work.
It worked great.
But anyway, so maybe we need to reinstitute those kind of thought process, but there was someone else that there was a tractor that broke down, and then, anyway, I was really struggling with the maintenance side, so if we can work together to make this all work as a community, I love those ideas, I think they're really great.
Some way to clean the panels because the dust is an issue on the panel.
Right, I mean, that makes all the sense in the world. Can I touch on one more? Oh, go ahead. Yes, please.
Okay, so you said, you service 20 islands, and somewhere in the communication, Decatur was referenced as a major island. So what are the islands that you've already classified not in consideration to get the solar panel? If Decatur's a major island, and out of the 20, what are the ones that are not?
Okay, so first of all, my reference point is Decatur's in the center of our world. Both of our submarine cables come through Decatur, so that's, talk about love. I mean, that's right there. So when I look at Decatur, that's what it is. It also adds benefits to locating batteries, and they don't take up a big footprint. But that's intriguing for us, because if we can get those cables maintained and we don't put the wear and tear on them, and we can discharge those before it goes to the mainland, it stops over here. That's unique in the way our grid works.
Is that the only reason Decatur was?
No, not at all. And the answer to your question is who needs to get, or which islands are gonna get, everyone should pay we're co-op, everyone should pay their fair share into the usage profile. And I think San Juan should pay more because they got higher load.
Well,
I think Orca's same thing. It's funny when I look at Center Island, I don't know, how's that one gonna work? Because you got trees around and so forth, but we need to figure out those kind of things too. And I don't think anyone should be off the table. I think that we need to figure out how to make it work so our whole co-op benefit. And not, the more selfish we are, the more we all lose.
So right now, your answer is all of the 20 islands that you service will be faced with.
There's a couple little ones that I would probably go, yeah, it's gonna be a hard one to
Some of the 20
justify the
islands are
connections, yeah,
one house, so, yeah.
What about Blakely?
Their load needs to be covered as far as I'm concerned. Now, I don't wanna make these blanket statements and say, you said Blakely was gonna get it. Next thing you know, I'm gonna have the next town hall on Blakely. But I think the concept is, we need to make sure that we're a co-op first and we figure out how to work together as a co-op. If it, maybe one location is good for batteries, but not solar, maybe another one's good for solar, not batteries. It's based on a lot of grid components too. So there's a lot of uniquenesses that go along with it, but in general, everyone should be paying their fair share. I hope I don't end up on Blakely next.
Can the UPS system be charged off the grid instead of solar? Like, could we have a larger battery capacity that's always kept topped off like a hospital and always run off the battery? So when we lose power, we're still running on battery, but we don't have to have the panels?
It'd just be getting more batteries, right? So.
But I mean, that would be in a building and
Yeah.
in the forest and not require sun or turbining.
Right, yeah.
Just an idea, but.
No, but I guess the balance is, we still have 30% load growth. This is great. So there's two different things going on. There's, how do you deal with having enough electricity in total? And then what do you do at nighttime? I'm trying to make it really simple.
Charge it off the grid at night.
Right, so that's kind of the issue. Here's an example of January, right? This is a similar chart, so this is 1 month. Now, the solar generation, remember, was way up here. Now, and we don't get a lot of solar going on in January, right? So it's not a lot of production. So what's going on is this right here has to be made up somehow, like batteries. So what you're touching upon is fundamental in how we keep the grid up. But remember, we have two issues. We got load growth that we gotta accomplish, or everything goes awry. And then we gotta figure out, what do we do for sort of an intermittent resource that doesn't work at night, or the batteries are not charged in the wintertime if you're relying only on solar.
Yeah, so to your point though, you could do that, but the cost of batteries, like so probably your biggest.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that could be something that's floated, because
batteries were down at, I don't know what, cost per megawatt, you can put them all over.
So the reason that we got the one we did is because we got a grant, I think it was a matching grant, was $2 million total. And we put in a lot of grant applications for batteries because we see how important those are. But when you start doing the math for all of us collectively as a co-op, you know, be still my heart. I mean, those things are really expensive. And so we're gonna always keep putting in grant submittals and so forth and perfect whatever our
Wait, I wanna say a couple of things here.
would we need.
So I know we have a couple questions online that we need to answer, and I know we've been here almost 2 hours, so I also wanna say people might be getting tired of sitting here, so let's take a couple questions online and see if people wanna stick around and keep doing questions, or if you wanna go get a burger and talk more one-on-one.
And I'm more than happy to
Yeah.
do either.
Okay, so.
David Groff says, what specifically will Opalco do to enhance fire protection?
Okay, specifically on fire protection, so I think we touched on, you know, we're gonna do a, want to make sure that we're really clear on the different categories. I think on the solar panels themselves, I think there's a way that we connect them and we use all the right UO listings, making sure that they're connected, making sure we install them right, because that's the biggest hurdle that I see whenever I do my research. You use the right equipment. When it comes to the battery, we have one battery, it's a self-contained situation where if there was a fire, that basically stays contained within the container itself, the white box that you guys have seen over on the existing. But there's no new batteries that are gonna go with that. The other one has to do with site maintenance, and my commitment to you is I'm gonna fix that. You know, if there were ever a fire on this island, there would be so many ramifications I can't even imagine. And I think that we need to take that very serious when it comes to maintenance, for clearing, for everything that we're doing on those lines. So what specifically am I gonna doing? The Love's property, part of the beauty about it is there's a water well there. And what we were thinking when we were going through this, now we still need to plan the configuration, but putting water apparatus in areas, you know, throughout the whole area that we could actually draw upon hydrants, existing pipes and so forth, that we will have, you know, an active location that we could get the water from and instantly put it on there, get together with you folks for training and so forth, and making sure that we understand, you know, what does it take to mitigate some of those fire dangers that we have. Thinking what that.
I mean, the only other thing would be just, you know, I mean, for electrical fires, so you have specific fire extinguishers for that would be located around.
You can't do it on demand, you have to have storage.
Right. I mean, the other thing is the huge piece is vegetation management, right? I mean, that's the big thing, is making sure you don't have tall grass growing. I mean, it's no different than, like, you know, you got your distribution lines, overhead lines, your transmission lines, keeping those right of ways clear, you know, helps prevent fires.
That's a big commitment that we have, is to keep our right of ways really true. I mean, you guys have really been supportive of that. We're gonna keep that up. We're gonna, you know, we would use that same philosophy in my, you know, reconfirming that commitment to you, because I don't think we've done a great job doing that as of yet.
Yeah, not to beat a dead horse, but there is no fire district here. So we don't have people to deploy immediately to fight this fire. So you can put equipment in, you can put water, you can do all these things. Who do you think is actually going to fight a fire if it occurs?
That goes back to that bigger picture. Quite frankly, I have an opinion on that, but you guys didn't want to talk about it.
Well, no, I don't want to get into why we do or don't have a fire district, but we don't have a fire district.
Right.
So that is an inherent risk and concern of locating a project like this on an island that doesn't have that service versus putting it on an island that does have that service.
Yeah, and I helped put out a fire in March of last year, not like summer, March. I was one of the first people there involved in it. So how are we gonna take care of a fire should it start?
What do you guys think?
Don't do the project. There's a good answer right there.
I know it was interesting, and my ears are open, and I'll get to a second. I went down the list of what causes, you know, the fire, and you look at it and you go, like, are solar panels on the list? And it's like 0.00. I'm not trying to say it's zero, but it's like 0.000. It's like cooking, it's like
Less than a house.
campfires and.
Fireworks.
Right, I mean,
It could be the fireworks. We're gonna do everything the answer to the question is, we're gonna do everything we can. But I think our whole entire community has a bigger discussion. Goodness sake, we gotta like figure the fire thing out.
Have you ever had
She has-
saltwater?
she
Oh,
has a
sorry, I'm sorry.
comment, yeah.
I want to clarify something and then I had a question.
Yeah.
Clarification, so when you talk about a 50% increase in need on the bigger islands like Orcas and San Juan versus a 30% increase in need on Decatur Island, because those islands are so much bigger, that's probably 100-fold greater increase than what we're gonna have here. Number one, that's the first comment. Number two, you never answered this gentleman's question, which was, why isn't Opalco considering installing solar arrays in huge open sunny fields in eastern Washington and then bringing it to us through a cable?
We probably have to put in another cable, because
Yeah,
it
right.
mentioned we're getting close
Yeah, I
to
mean,
capacity,
We
which
don't need to do that anyway.
is possible.
Yeah, I mean, that would be one thing is also transmitting the, there's transmission operators, and to your point, like, you have capacity limits on their lines too, so there's only so much you can put and move it from one area to another. It's kind of like, we're part of like the entire western grid. It goes all the way from Canada, all the way down to California, over to Colorado. It's one giant grid, and then there's ties various other places, but.
We're also part of a group, it's a co-op group made up of, I think there's 25 co-ops that are part of this power resource group. And we're asking those same kind of questions. It's like, where can we put this on a bigger scale? For us, it turns out because of our cable limitations and so forth, it's like a financial hedge. It's not really a reliability because you can't get the electrons all the way here. But a financial hedge, if that makes sense, what that means is that power cost goes way up because you have a weather event and the price of power through the roof. It's probably through the roof over this other area that's away from us, but at least we could collect money over here to offset our power bills here. But it's not a reliability play. Did that answer your question?
So it's too expensive. Is that I mean, it can be done. We can put another cable under the ocean, just like we have one now, right?
Who's paying for it?
Yeah, $100 million.
Who's paying for it?
$100 million.
$100 million.
It's like 100.
You're not paying $100 million.
I tried a grant for that and I got denied. You had a confirm, what was the confirmed one?
Well, the perspective of the 50% increase in the big islands versus the 30% increase in this island, I mean, what is that in perspective?
I think you got it. I mean, their loads are so much bigger than Decatur's because they got grocery stores and all the businesses and so forth. That has to be taken into consideration. What we've come up with, it's really interesting, is we look at it's like 1% of your island kind of thing. It's like, even though it sounds daunting, like, oh my God, there's gonna be solar panels everywhere, it's not really that way for two reasons. One is we need about 1% of the community land base, right? There's 110,000 acres of land in San Juan County, all the islands, and about 1% is what we're struggling with. That low growth component. So it's not like, I don't want anyone to have a concept in their head that you're gonna see, Decatur Island from the moon or something because there's so many solar panels here. It's not really the case. We need to figure out how we're gonna get that 1%. It may be higher on certain areas that have more load. And everyone, in my mind, should work together as a co-op. And Decatur, because of their landmass and so forth, I think is limited. And I think the neat thing that I see with Decatur is we're only talking about trying to cover what you guys are gonna be needing in this window. And if you grow more, we need more. If you don't, then you guys are like the model community.
But that power doesn't stay here. It goes into the grid for everybody.
Not, well, initially, I would say the bigger picture is yes, but everyone has to pay their fair share. I think it's pretty limited to you guys because your growth, because we're talking about when the power goes out, that we're gonna do, we're gonna discharge the battery for Decatur.
Is that a promise?
Well, I mean, that'd be like me promising when a ferry shows up on Decatur. If I don't.
So you're right, the process that we have we're actually gonna be using, so.
Well, answer that. Okay, so the battery, you've used it twice.
Right.
And I think that, yeah, I mean, what we're gonna be doing is this is the pilot to increase that, if anything. I wanna make sure I'm not wishy-washy because I don't wanna
So do
be.
you have those numbers about the expected increase on the big islands versus, I bet we're like 1% of the expected.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I can come up with that. We can put on by the way, I wanna go over on San Juan and say, oh my gosh, you should have just heard what I had to go through over here and say, you guys need to step up to the plate. And so, yeah, I'm gonna go with that.
Yeah, and the gentleman in the hat, I don't think it's picked me yet, yeah, yes.
Mark Fox, been a part-time resident here 20 years. My primary residence is in the Santa Cruz Mountains in California where I work as an engineer. I've been off the grid in Santa Cruz since 1993, exclusively off of the grid, not tied into Pacific Gas and Electric. Provides 100% of the power we have for our nearly 3,000 square foot home and some outbuildings. I was a dealer for a company called Alternative Energy Engineering in California, where I distributed solar panels, inverters, charge controllers, batteries, etc. in the 90s. So a lot of people have talked to me about solar over the years. Number one thing I say to them is, let me see where you want to put your panels. Because you need early morning sun, you need late afternoon sun, you need to face south with your panels. You need to have them aimed at the winter sun angle, not at the summer sun angle, because that isn't when the high loads are. And the place you're proposing to put panels here would rank pretty darn low on my list of good places to put solar panels, given the number of hours of sunshine you have here for a year. That's one thing. My home is 20 miles from Lost Landing, California. I'm sure you've heard of that because there was a massive Vistra Energy lithium battery fire there about 6 months ago. We're now dealing with all the heavy metal runoff from that site. It took 2 months to put it out. That was with major firefighting effort. Now, I realize there's newer battery technology than that was, but sometimes things happen. I could say, use cruder terms to describe that, but things happen. And California has been plagued. It's a whole different topic with uninsulated wire and power poles and windstorms, knocking power lines down, setting the forest on fire. We had a 90,000 acre fire 2 miles from our house 5 years ago at this point, 90,000 acres. I'm actually in favor of renewable energy. I like the idea, but I think Decatur Island is the wrong place for it. I think you need to go find a south-facing slope. It's a field, probably on San Juan Island. I've seen them on Orcas Island. I've seen them on Lopez Island. I've biked over all those islands. And you need to find a place where you get the most power for your dollar.
Well,
let me finish. And I think there are places that look like that. Will you have to pay more for the real estate? Yes. Will you have to pay less for the site development? Yes. I think your proposed project here on Decatur is an experiment. And an experiment is defined as a procedure with an uncertain result. I think with the shallow soils we have here, I'm a geotechnical engineer. I think you're going to generate a lot of runoff. I mean, I've seen it in California on our 172 acres, where we selectively harvested timber twice. And immediately now we had year-round streams downstream from the harvest area that we never had before, because the trees weren't drinking the water anymore. And I think whoever the gentleman is, that I guess it's you, who bought James Barker's place, He's directly downstream. The airstrip is downstream in Decatur Shores where I live. That's got drainage problems already. I think you're gonna find there's gonna be a lot of impacts that you could select a better site on another island that wasn't Decatur. And I think on top of that, you know, I hear Decatur's power needs are gonna go up by 30% or something like that the next decade, they're projected to. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. It's probably linked to the economy, given a lot of second home purchases. But I'd really be interested to know if a 30% power increase on Decatur, what percentage of that is that of the total power for, say, San Juan Island? I'd imagine it's the growth on San Juan Island is gonna dwarf Decatur Island. And I guess I'll say one more thing. I mean, I appreciate Opalco. They provide power in my house. And one thing I really don't like, and it really came to a head during the internet fiber optic project, was the Opalco 35-foot boat parked on the Decatur Shores dock. We're parking a boat more than 26 feet long is not allowed unless it's intended. They park there all day, all week.
Leave cars at the ramp.
Tie up is limited to 3 hours at a time. I would come into the dock in my boat, and Opalco had 2 or 3 boats there. And I had no way to unload my boat and go to my house. And I started to think, why do they get to violate all the rules in my home community, my small community, Decatur Shores, rules that I can't violate? So I hope when you are planning the massive manpower to build this project, that you exclusively use the county ramps and do not use the Decatur Shores dock. This project is not an emergency. In an emergency, when there's a power outage, I understand coming to the Decatur Shores dock and dealing with it, because we're gonna have to deal with it for a day or two, but we're all in this together. But for a planned project that's gonna be multiple years, it's a huge impact. So if you're gonna run an experiment and see what all the impacts are of building this project, go build it on San Juan Island. Go build it on Lopez Island. And then come back to us and say, look, we just did this. Go talk to those communities and see what the impacts were. And then I think everybody, if the impacts were all low, would support you.
All right, well, thank you. We got another question.
Go ahead, Nori.
I guess I need some clarification. Where are we in this process? Because I've heard, okay, so I was just handed a piece of paper to go to public or council meeting on the 20th about this, but you're telling us you want to speak to everyone, hear all of our concerns, and you're all for alternatives. Well, I might have to rub the 2 brain cells together. Is today the 10th or the 11th? That's not very many days if you're turning in an application or have turned in an application for the county to make some decision. I guess I don't understand where we are on this project.
I think I can clear it up, even though I don't know the paper you're holding. What the 20th is, my understanding is we were going through
information from Sally Rogers.
It was the lease is what, so what we did, I guess the history, if you guys are curious, or when we were challenged with, what are we gonna do? We're gonna lose that low income solar, which I know it's taking more of the back burner after this conversation. It's, what are we gonna do about the loan? We don't wanna lose it. And the county, they did me a favor, and please don't hate the county for trying to offer up their public works site. Because I said, hey, is there any way I could use that just to satisfy that? So on the 20th is the decision on whether to lease us a portion of that, of the public works site. But that was my request, by the way, and it's not the county. So please don't think of the county as someone who's really trying to help us get that grant done. And anyway, just know that.
So it has nothing to do with this project.
It has everything to do with the project, but it's only a portion of the project. It's a lease in order to get.
It's only that half of the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But even if we get that lease, we still have to permit it, plan all
Yeah,
those things.
you still
This
got all
is
that.
step one to be able to utilize the county land.
Does that make sense, Lorraine?
So you're months away,
Yeah, I mean, we
Yes.
gotta submit, we gotta.
basically.
Yes.
Yeah, we gotta do all those reports that were talked about earlier, we're gonna be doing. We're talking about this right here, the county owns this 5 acres, we're talking about leasing this portion. Is that,
How many years are you away from if you want to develop the other, before you go to a different island? Because don't you think, I mean, if we already started, don't you think you should be working on some of these other islands?
can I give you an observation before the other island? I think it's interesting. The part that my learning curve, and this is a positive for me, is, how do you manage a utility? I looked at, everything is, to me, it kind of lined up, right? Doing Decatur, coming up with a pilot, not a test, but coming up with a pilot exactly what kind of your profile for future growth needs. That really made sense to me, and I thought we were doing a good thing. We're removing 16 derelict cars. We're getting rid of 3 boats that are over there. We're gonna be protecting this wetland, I think, really, really well. And so I think in my mind, I was like, God, this is gonna be great, right? It's gonna be, we're gonna wiggle in some solar panels in here and protect all the wetlands that are really important. And this was kind of a wake-up call in my mind, but I like where you're, some of the thoughts that we're having today.
We have a young person back there.
Oh, yeah.
Open resident. This in a pattern and presentation where you have been sort of partially to some of the questions in this problem.
Is there what am I leaving off? And I appreciate that. Let me know, because I can always get improved public speaking skills. And if I'm leaving questions unanswered, let me know.
Western Washington, one, a couple of others.
So why wouldn't we build in Western Washington? So the Western Washington is not going to be a direct link to the electricity that we actually get fed. You would have to have that electron. Think about it. It's in Western Washington, really far away. Oh, Eastern Washington, sorry.
Where the sun shines.
Yeah. So it would have to, that generation would have to go across transmission lines and all the way to get here. And the way that electricity works is it's gonna take its path to fill load first. So we never actually get that electron here.
Well, and one of the big things too is just, so to go through that process, you have to submit with whatever transmission provider, say you're building in that area, and they'd have to let you say whether or not you could build there from a capacity or what upgrades would need to be done. So like, I think was mentioned earlier, you can't deny someone service, so they can say, oh yeah, you can build 100 megawatts in Eastern Washington, it's gonna cost you $300 million for a transmission line to go across the Cascades.
By the way,
you just don't know.
By the way, there's requests in our power provider. There's a really good question. I'm glad you asked it. There's actually constraints on our grid we're at a capacity. They would need to build more transmission lines to get on the western side. I got that right. From the eastern side. And a lot of utilities are really struggling with that because it's a natural to have the sun being shining over there and then have the generation on the west side. By the way, the east side, they don't think it's funny either. I mean, when you go to their communities, if you think you're gonna go and build, have the generation in the eastern side, they're gonna let you have it. They're gonna go put it on your islands, right? Like you guys are going, get it over on San Juan. Like they're gonna go. Go ahead.
Nobody freak out. I just kind of want to read the room here, but you mentioned it somewhat jokingly. It would take a load off your mind if you did let these blackouts go through. I mean, a lot of Decatur is, wood stoves and gas ovens. So just like,
Yeah.
Would we be okay with blackouts? I don't know.
Yeah.
Some of us were.
By the way, I wasn't saying that blackouts were a joke. I don't.
They make UPSs for a house, like a single house level.
Going forward, so if you have the plan, I think 27 is the number, I could be wrong.
It's somewhere over 30.
Okay, let's just say whatever that number is, it's
Yeah.
a high number, and you've got some equipment and there's grant money. Are you foreseeing the funds for the long term of this project? Are the funds there? Like where are the funds gonna be?
Oh, this is a good question. For the
Financial aspect from the big picture thing, you might get it quartered away and then run out of money.
well, good question. Let me try to answer it this way. You guys haven't had, Decatur has not had to come out of pocket at all on the current solar.
I can't.
Well, unless you bought a share. How many people bought shares? Right. So those are the people that are part of that financial makeup. So we're proposing to do, this extension is a community solar project. So all the dollars are paid for by people equivalent to who just raise their hands. I think there's 272 participants that participated in the first round. So they're funding that. What we do is we build it and then we sit in, our group sells shares of that to our community. So if you're in an area that doesn't have sun, it's really good for areas that, say you don't have a profile that's south facing and some of the attributes that we're talking about earlier. It's community solar helps that, or say that you don't have the methodology or the pocketbook to come up with $35,000 to put something on your roof. That's where the community solar, but it's all funded by the members that participate. So the funding on that side is not an issue. Grant funding is a challenge, and I think that's how we pay for portions of our battery. And our little tiny co-op is not the Bank of Opalco. I don't know if anyone has that perception. We basically are you guys, right? We don't accumulate any cash. We just basically borrow the funds from RUS. That's the way a co-op model works. And we're only collectively as good as what we want to accomplish. I mentioned before is why don't we think we're going to see a lot of solar more than over 1%? It's because of that, right? We get our funding through our membership, and their membership they're only going to want what they're using and nothing more. So there's always going to be a limitation on how much we're going to do, and it's going to be the right number because it's what we need, not what we, because we're not the best.
I want to say that there's some people that are getting restless. I've gotten a few cut, so I think some people want to go.
Let everyone know that the food's ready.
Yeah. So I think let's go eat and we can keep answering your questions.
I'll
I
stay
think
here.
we're committed to coming back, we want
And I'll stay here and answer any questions. Bend my ear.
Oh, and there's comment, keep your pens. Yeah, there's more pens. Yeah.
I got one, thank you. So, really appreciate you coming out. We appreciate you.
If you want a little bit. Okay, good.
It's wonderful. They're not. It's resting out in the open.
Why don't we start?
Yeah. It's like, I know that.
Thank you very much.